run dry. Seas they are wasting, the rain falling from the sky. Dust is creeping, swallowing all in sight. People are weeping.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing swell, Bob. How you doing?
I am. It's Tuesday, and we're here, and that's the
Daylight
best part of the
savings
week.
time. It's daylight saving time.
It is. We are in daylight savings time. Listen, I have never been more acutely aware of when daylight savings time happens than since we've been doing this show, because I have to, when I create the promos, I got to make sure, is it EST, is it EDT, PD, and I don't want it to be wrong, because I get very anal about stuff like that. And so, I got to pay attention far in advance when it happens, so that when the promos are made ahead of time, that it's saying whether it's daylight time or standard time. And,
so you're telling me that we're not going to be doing any remotes from Newfoundland?
Listen, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's you. There's a lot, because also I have to tell, people all over the place
I understand.
we had Newfoundlanders or Halifax. We have all right, folks, this is the one. On Thursday, we're doing 2 shows this week. So we're here tonight. We have a great guests tonight. We're going to talk about some really cool stuff. However, we all have another show on Thursday. And on Thursday, we have 2 guests. One is very close in our Eastern time zone, as we are very used to. The other one is in England. And so when we were scheduling, I'm like, it's midnight when we go live over there. And our guest, Allison Sampson, who's going to be on Thursday, is like, it's fine with me. So we will be here, and they will be in GMT.
Well, yeah, right. On those occasions when I've worked with Australian writers and artists, which I enjoy doing, the math goes right out the window.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, okay, we're all going to be up all night trying to figure out what time we're all going to be talking.
Yeah, it's the way it is. I mean, but like I said, so it is Eastern Standard. It is daylight savings time. Hopefully
saving. It's singular.
Daylight saving time.
Right.
And hopefully, like, I'm not a big fan of the changing of the times, but we need to go back one more time if people are going to get rid of it.
If people are going to get rid of it, we should keep it the way it is right now today.
But that's wrong.
Otherwise, I become Barnabas Collins.
All right. We got some stuff to talk about before we bring our guests in. I want to talk, folks, about, are you paying attention to popculturesquad.com? Because there was a really good piece by my co-host here yesterday. I'm going to put the link in the comments so people can check it out. But one of the things that we talked about, or that you talked about, the big thing you talked about, was the Phantom. If you haven't been reading the Phantom, the dailies, you should. And there was a storyline that happened last year. It ended up already, but there was a very interesting thing, and I found this to be truly hilarious. So this is the villain of this story. Am I correct?
Absolutely right.
And his name is
Ian Mollusk.
Ian Mollusk. Man, that name sounds awfully familiar. I
think that is brilliant.
Well, it is. It is. Tony DePaul and Mike Manley are the creators on this. Tony writes, Mike draws. I shared your piece with Mike. He thought it was cool. I thought your piece was very interesting as well. The concept is, we are existing in a world in where there is such a perfect supervillain walking around the White House. I mean, is that what brought what brought this to your attention and why you wanted to like highlight the great work that Tony and Mike were doing?
Tony and Mike have been doing great work for quite a while.
I didn't mean to diminish that. I agree with you.
No. I'm not. I didn't think you were. I just wanted to say that because it's true and fair. The thing that really got me about the story. Now I was late. I've been playing catch up this month on my newspaper strips. Love newspaper strips, and there's still a couple of continuity strips out there. The Phantom's the best of them, maybe the best of them in my opinion. But Ian Mollusk, who looks just like Elon Musk, is the guy in this story. And this story was started well before, particularly if you're talking about when it was written, well before the last election.
But also well before Elon Musk really injected himself into the last election.
Oh, he's always been an asshole.
Well, I didn't say he wasn't an asshole. I'm just saying his $247 million or whatever it wasn't
right.
Yeah.
I think these guys nailed him. Now, okay, I'm very politically oriented and I look for this sort of stuff, and I look at this sort of stuff a lot. And this is one of the most decisive, particularly given its timing, one of the most decisive commentaries on what's going on, as is, I think, our interview tonight, actually.
Sure. I agree with you. We are... Our guests are going to be, they're both here. We're going to get to them shortly. We have a couple of things we want to touch on first, but Paul Eza and D-Fish will be on, and we're going to talk about their brand new project that launched today that I'm very excited about for reasons I've never been excited about something before. And we'll get to that. But listen, the world is falling apart. I would like for there to be some good news. So I think having these guys on tonight is great news. They're in the process of making a fantastic comic that I think everybody's going to like. The Phantom, I know, is something that's very, very special to you, and I hope that we're going to be able to talk about the Phantom more and more as we go on, because Mad Cave has the license for it for regular comics, which are going to be coming back. We are going to have a Mad Cave editor on in a couple of weeks, actually next week, which will be fun. Spoil the article just a little bit about your experience with the Phantom and how did you become aware of it? Because with me, there was some back issues here and there, and of course, Defenders of the Earth was a big piece, and I think there was a cartoon that I saw once or twice. But I mean, I've always been a fan. I love the thing about the Phantom that for me has always gotten it was like, it's the tagline. It is the ghost who walks.
Yes,
it is
perfect.
It gets you. It makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up when I think about it. I love it. So, where did you first encounter the Phantom?
Probably by mistake. I was at my local drugstore going through the comics. I had just turned 8, which was not does not make me a precocious reader for the time. Today it might be, but back then 8-year-olds were reading a lot of comics, and there weren't very many superheroes. Just the DC Triumvirate and a few others, and publishers were trying to experiment here and there with bringing back superheroes because they knew how to do them, and it sold better than anything else in its prime. So Harvey Comics, which was thought of even then as ghosts and witches and funny ghosts and funny witches,
right?
Which scares some people, but okay, deal with it. They had they used to have a terrific line of horror comics, war comics, your odd superhero, the original Black Cat, Lee Elias, one of my favorites. Some great artists. I mean, terrific artists. Bob Powell being at the head of that, and he's going into the Hall of Fame in San Diego this year. Well deserved. So I saw this magazine, this comic book. It called itself a magazine, and I thought that was hip. It was like putting on pretensions. It was called Harvey Hits Magazine, and what it was a monthly where they put together whatever it is they had and shot it out there and see if anybody cared. This is how we got Little Dot's aunts and uncles, which Little Dot was neurotic enough to think were really her aunts and her uncles. Nonetheless, they still had some licenses with King Features, including the Phantom, and they released a Phantom comic book. And I had never seen the Phantom before, let alone know that he was the first skin-tight superhero costume character in American history, created by the magnificent and wonderful human being Lee Falk. I could tell you Lee Falk stories for hours.
We could.
And that's just the ones that I was part of. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful human being who created 2 years earlier Mandrake the Magician, who could arguably be called a superhero. Phantom definitely is. And it had this great gimmick. And as I was reading it as an 8-year-old, it was like, you're kidding me, right? This is what? And which was that some people, usually criminals, thought the Phantom could have been like 400 years old because he was always around. So always a Phantom, always looked like that pretty much. I mean, he didn't have automatics back in the 1600s. Still. And, what would happen is he'd die and they'd replace him with his son, who was already well-trained. And evidently once there was no son, so there was a daughter, who was probably very uncomfortable in the costume. And I thought, okay, so the Ghost Who Walks, that's only half the title. The Ghost Who Walks can never die.
Right.
Because to the evildoers out there, the superstitious lot, they thought he was always around because he was always around. I thought that was a great gimmick. And then a couple months afterwards, I was at lunch at school. It was like second, third grade, whatever it is that 8-year-olds were at that time. And somebody had a copy of the Sunday comic section from the Chicago American. I'd never seen it before because we didn't take the American in my house because of William Randolph Hearst. And there was Flash Gordon. There was Prince Valiant. There was all kinds of wonderful, beautifully drawn strips. But damn it, there was the Phantom. What the fuck? This comic book that I can't find is in the newspapers that I can't buy. Oddly enough, within a couple of years, I went out and bought my own newspapers. I bought all of them, not just for the comics, but that was a good part of it. So I could follow the Phantom every day. It was drawn by Cy Berry, an old DC artist who is still with us, and one of the magnificent artists. When they list all the great artists in DC history, and they can list a lot of them, he's there and prominent and deserves to be. So I was thrilled. The artwork was much better in the strip than it was in the comic book because the comic book reprinted strips by Wilson McCoy, an artist so bad even Lee Falk didn't like him. He was way too polite to say that in public, although I think he finally did. But he wasn't a very good artist on the Phantom. I didn't care when I was 8 because, comics were superhero comics were very stylized. You had Dick Sprang on Batman, you had Ross Andru on Wonder Woman, you had Kurt Swan, who was not very stylized, brilliant artist. But Wayne Boring,
Oh yeah.
Superman artist, and he was highly stylized. So it fit right in kind of with me. Plus, it was new.
Yeah.
So I was all excited. 10 months later, Harvey Hits magazine came out with another Phantom. They had done so 2 or 3 times previous to my
You
discovery.
just didn't know that.
No, because there were no back issue stores. There were no comic book stores. You know, there were dangerous old magazine stores in much more dangerous neighborhoods, at least where I grew up. And an 8-year-old did not go there in those neighborhoods. Skid Row was the name of all of those
Good
neighborhoods. I think everywhere in the country that had old magazine stores at that time. I was thrilled. So I read it. I ate it right up. The next time I was that enthusiastic about a comic book was Fantastic Four #1, which came out 3 years later.
That's awesome. And now you've gotten, through. We're still reading it today, and
Oh yeah.
And the folks who are creating it are bringing the Ghost Who Walks from the centuries and centuries and centuries right into the modern day with the Space Ox and Ian Mollusk and all of that.
If Ian Mollusk didn't grab me, and it did, Space Ox definitely would have gotten me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a brilliant gag, and it also immediately reveals where the creators of this strip are at on that issue. I don't think either of them are Canadian.
No. That Mike does a show. He does the Jamar show with him. He's Jamar's co-host. So who's on?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he'll be on tomorrow night. You can find him on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you're watching this. Look for the Pencil to Pencil. You can talk to Mike. You can see Mike Manley tomorrow night. We got one more thing I want to get to before we get our guests in, and I'm excited to do that. So it is time to talk about some new number one.
Ooh.
So there's a couple of new number ones that come out this week that they're not actually new issues of things. They are collected editions, but they were so interesting that I needed to include them in the new number ones, and I needed to talk to you about them. One is this. There's a Dead Man Omnibus coming out. And when I say omnibus, it's pretty much everything you wanted. It is
everything I wanted.
Well, listen, I like Dead Man a lot, but it is 944 pages. It includes
its own car.
The Strange Adventures, the Brave and the Bolds, the Aquamans, the Challenge of the Unknowns. There's a Justice League. There's a couple of World Finest. There's the Phantom Stranger stuff. There's the Dead Man 1 to 4 issue. The Dead Man comic 1 to 4. There's Secret Origins. There's like 6 issues of Adventure Comics. It has these are some of the creators in this book: Neil Adams, Len Wein, Bob Haney, Jerry Conway, Jack Miller, Andy Helfer, Jim Aparo, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. That's just some. There's more.
And Carmine.
And Carmine. Carmine is in there as well. He's just not listed on the thing that I'm looking. There's Carmine. There's George Russos. There's too many people, but this book looks great. It is expensive. These are both books we're going to talk about tonight are expensive. This is $125, 944 pages, hardcover.
And you can drop it on a mouse.
Well, you could kill a rat with this. The other one, you think this is a big book? I got a bigger one for you. The Chew Nomnibus edition. It is all of Chew. All 60 issues of Chew. It's a soft cover. It is 1,320 pages.
Okay. How much does it weigh?
I don't know, but it costs $65.
I would I'd go to Amazon, which these days I'm loath to do, just to find out how much the book weighs. Because I'm an old man.
I'll see
And-
if
and
I
I
can
can't
get it
lift
before the
that.
show. It might be. I'll see if I can find out before the show ends. But, yeah, it's Sherry said she wants it. I don't know if there's room on any of our shelves for it, but she's a huge
Sherry will find room.
Sherry loves. She was probably her second favorite comic book of all time.
Really?
With number one being Fables.
Huh.
Um,
That's interesting.
um,
We should talk to her about that sometime.
we should. She has a lot of really good things that she likes. But anyway, so Chew, the Nomnibus edition, which I think is fantastic. We should get John Layman on this show because he is very interesting. He will find room for the book, apparently.
See, I told you.
I know. You were right. All right.
Sherry's going to be in Ithaca.
She will be in Ithaca.
and me and others.
Yes. Well, at Ithacon, she'll be there. She's probably going to bide her time between you and the Simonsons and making sure that everybody is taken care of, because that's how she is. Did I mention the Simonsons are going to be there?
I think you just did. Yeah.
I think I did.
And Dean Haspel, our friend of Pop Culture Squad, who saved our ass last week.
He did save our ass last week, and he will be there, and I will be very excited. I'm hoping Ed might have some details when we have him on Thursday about what the panel layout looks like, because Dean's one of my possible guests on one of my possible panels. We're working that out. All right. We have fooled around long enough. We thank you all for listening to our babbling and nonsense and talking about stuff. Everybody should be nice and warmed up with their beverages, and we are going to bring our guests in. I'm going to spoil this just a little bit because I'm very excited about it. Our guests are the writer and artist for a book that is being kickstarted. The Kickstarter started today. We're very excited about it. This book, when it gets funded and printed and delivered, will be the first actual comic book that I have a credit in. I edited the script for Paul. We talked about a bunch of stuff, gave him a bunch of notes. We worked through that, and Dee's gone and drawn amazing pages that go together. I'm very excited to talk to them about how they came about this, but I'm super excited for myself. So
we're all super excited for you, Bob.
I thank you. Well, let's bring them in. Paul Eza and D Fish. Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Hey folks.
Hey.
Oh, Dee's muted. Let's unmute her.
Oh, we can't have D muted.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Thought you were gonna have to put up a sign or something, write things on a whiteboard.
Well, I don't know if Mike saw it while Dee was in the green room. You have something that he would enjoy.
Ah! There you go.
Actually,
wait, let me see your ring.
oh, and yes, and I went downstairs to grab this when you started talking about it.
Do you know the first time I saw a ring like that, it might have been the same ring, was on Lee Falk's finger. He was dressed up. This was for a meeting at King Features. And
wow.
he came in to kind of throw his weight around, and it's kind of because I asked him to, because we were having problems with King Features. And he came up dressed up as Mandrake the Magician with the opera cape and the top hat and the wand. And he had his phantom bolo tie with a phantom clasp and both phantom rings, the good one and the bad one. I know everybody else in the room had seen him like that, and in point of fact, I had too. But boy, you want to stop a meeting and impress people. Have an 80-year-old man walk into the room dressed like that. That was great.
That's awesome.
Did it work?
God, yes. Well, nobody would stand up to Lee.
So just bring Lee and you get what you want, right? Is that how that works?
I brought Lee in. I knew I was going to need some help, some muscle, and I called him up and I told him how excited I was to be actually to be working with him. Sorry, guys, we're taking up all your time. And he felt very honored and stuff. And says, "Yeah, I'm sure that." He said, "What meeting?" And I said, "Well, I'm sure you just haven't. They haven't told you yet. They haven't gotten a hold of you yet, but this Friday we have a meeting at King Features, and it's about the DC Comics' Phantom series, and we wanted to work all that out. And I just wanted to just say hi again before we did that. And we talked, and I sort of explained to him some of the problems we were having on the Flash Gordon project, which we had major problems because they kept on changing art directors, and we kept on ripping it up and starting over. And each time it was like pulling teeth. Well, Lee cut through all that bullshit. And this is the man who, in my opinion, created the American costume superhero. That's
There
it.
you go.
Yes.
All right. So we spent a lot of time talking to Phantom. I love the Phantom.
That's it.
We're going to talk about a different superhero. We're going to talk about a brand new superhero called the Olympian, which started today on Kickstarter. Before we get into talking about it, I want to play for the folks the trailer to the things to give them an idea, because I really think that you did a great job with this, Paul. So let's do that.
Hey, yeah, you. Let me tell you about my grandson. That's him right there. No, not that guy. This guy. Name's Vasilis. Great kid. I basically took over running the family restaurant after I got sick. And there he is helping his Yaya Helena pack up the attic after I passed on. You see that amulet there? The one Vasilis just found? Helena and I brought that back from Greece after our honeymoon. It had been in her family for ages. She insisted that we keep it hidden. I never knew why, but she was determined. So up to the attic it went. And after a while, we just forgot about it. Clearly, it did not forget about our family. Now that Vasilis has it, it couldn't have chosen anyone better. I just hope he's ready for what's coming.
That was good.
Yeah,
Really good.
How'd you like the voiceover work?
I did. Who did that?
It wasn't bad. I was actually making mental notes that I was going to not mention. I would have brought a little bit more, but that's it. It was beautiful.
Well, that's okay. I mean, it's my voiceover debut, so
Is it
I've
you?
done
That is-
voiceover work. I admire those who make a living at it. It requires a degree of dedication that every actor has, which is why I went into comics.
All right. So it's a great intro. It's a great trailer because it gives you kind of an idea about what's going to happen in the story. But so this is a hero's journey kind of a thing where someone doesn't know that they're to be the hero and they're figuring it out. From my perspective, when Paul and I started talking about this, and you sent me the script, and I kind of looked through it, and took me a minute to figure out how I wanted to give you advice, because a lot of it was great. I mean, from the get go, it really you had a good tempo and the pace of the story coming through. One of the things, and I want to get to D really quick, but one of the things that I was thinking earlier today about what I wanted to talk to you about, having read Heroes and Zeros and having read all this issue as well, you do a great job with the non-critical banter. For a new writer, you're the way that you build relationships that are not part of any of the sort of action or the critical moments, the building of the side characters and the environment with which the story occurs is really, really something that I really admire about you. Is that something that you are struggle with? Is something you pay more attention to? Or is it something that just comes natural?
So, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And the answer is I don't know. I think a lot of the things you talked about, the sort of the pacing, that is something that I definitely paid attention to when I started doing, particularly with Heroes and Zeros, because like we talked about on this day last year, I wrote that entire series before even bringing an artist in to start working on it. So I had a lot of time to work with that and sort of pare it down and see in my mind what worked and what didn't. The things you're talking about, Bob, though, some of the side characters, the other relationships, and while some of them may have more to do down the road in the series as the series develops, to me, that's just more part of building maybe not a believable world, because we're still dealing with superheroes and mythical creatures and things like that, but a relatable world. You don't just walk in and see your friends at the bar. You walk in and nod to the other people and go talk to the bartender and whatever it is you're going to do, and you still sit down and your focus is mainly on your friends, but there's other stuff going on. And so to make it feel a little bit more relatable, a little bit more real, I just try and build some of that stuff in.
That's awesome.
I like the family scene you set up in your preview that's online. And we're seeing more and more of that, not so much in comics, but on television and in television comics. And I really like that, because we don't, that's something that we haven't seen before. We don't see very much of. Usually the superheroes are too busy fighting each other than to go home and fight with mom and dad, like the rest of us have done. But I enjoy that. It smacks of authenticity very heavily. And if those are the concerns on the characters' minds, well, those are legitimate concerns that we all have. It makes your characters much more relatable because, hey, they got parents too, they got family situations. I really enjoyed that. At first I thought, like, wow, no action in a preview. That's really cool. And then I thought, wow.
We got a little bit of action for you.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things people are going to enjoy about this particular issue, is that it is very much you take an appropriate amount of time in developing what's going to happen, and it's there are a couple of ways to go about things. Like, there are a lot of times where you're reading an opening issue and you get all the way to the end, and all of a sudden giant cliffhanger, right? And that's where the only action occurs, and that's a little disappointing. There's an appropriate build up to what's going on, and then in a meaningful manner, there's action that occurs that kind of leads you, builds up, and then we get to the end of the issue. And I think that the timing of all the things that happen, I think is really great in this issue. I want to get to D. What was your take on when this was presented to you?
When I first sat down and gave it a read, one of the first things that I personally noticed was, again, like you were pointing out, Paul is fairly new as a comic book writer, but the naturalistic banter that was like, it didn't feel like forced, like it didn't feel like sitcom banter. It felt more like actual people. You were talking about the scene with his parents, and that was one of my favorite scenes to draw in the entire book, because there was so much fun to be had with the expressions and body language. That's my favorite stuff to draw. Specifically, I joked to Paul that he avoided the one trope that I've gotten from a bunch of writers. Like, a lot of people who are new writers will do the panel wherein an action and its reaction happen at the same time. And I was just like, you didn't do that, and I'm so happy. You didn't write a character getting punched and then returning the punch after falling down and getting back up in one panel, because that only works in the Flash.
I mean, I think
right.
I think I caught one of those in the edit, but he's really good.
Yeah, it was
actually,
pacing, the natural dialogue, all that. Sorry.
And I have to say, first of all, you've done a great job with helping everything with it, and adding the panels where it needed a panel added, and tweaking things around, and you've been just fantastic with that. As far as the trope that I avoided, you can thank the folks I was collaborating with on Heroes and Zeros for that, because they're the ones that beat it out of me very quickly. And they were like, again, Dee and I have known each other for a long time. So if I had done it, Dee would have beaten that out of me with no hesitation. But, Casey,
you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, right. And I appreciate that. but like, Casey Quevedo, who was the artist on Heroes and Zeros, before I reached out to him for that project, we'd never met. So I really appreciated that he was willing to do things like that. Say, hey, this doesn't work. Like, I see what you're doing, but no. And just kind of explaining it to me and giving me that extra guidance that I probably needed at that point. I probably still do to some extent, but
there are very few rules, but in comics, and how to do graphic storytelling. But those that are there because they've borne the test of time. You look at the earliest, almost pre-Golden Age comics, the earliest, like Superman stories, Batman stories, even Submariner. And you'll see them making these mistakes once or twice, and then never again. And everybody else learns from it. And the cool thing is, we keep on upping the ante. We now have much better production values, much better printing alternatives. We can do stories that those folks back in the 30s and 40s could never dream of doing. We have a better educated audience, a more sophisticated audience. And that just makes you have to work harder, but it allows you greater freedom for doing so. And the trick is to make that work for you. So far, you've done that. So this is a wonderful medium, because it's not going to be like that in 20 years. It'll be something else. It'll be better.
Yeah.
Or different or wider. So I look forward to that, and I appreciate everybody, including you guys, for your contributions in our evolution.
Well, thanks.
So,
and I appreciate that too. And it's, you're right. There are no rules except for the ones that work. And so, one of the rules that I've found myself breaking in this one is, again, You think you're telling a superhero story. You go out and ask 20 people, like, oh no, you got to get the action right in there right away. You gotta show them in the super suit right away. And I understand why people say that, but it didn't fit this story in the way we wanted to tell this story, because there were a couple of other things that are incredibly important for the way the entire story is going to go, both in this issue and in the remainder of the first arc that we're planning. And if you don't do it now, it's going to feel forced later when you're trying to squeeze it back in.
Yeah, Jim Shooter had a rule when he was governing Marvel Comics.
I like
Which
governing.
was-
That's a good word, governing.
It was I chose it carefully. He believed in that 3-page rule, and I think he codified it over at Marvel, where by the end of the 3rd page, you have set up everything you absolutely need to set up. There can still be stuff you reveal along the way. You do whatever flashback information you need to convey, but by the 3rd page, you're in the action. And I think for a Marvel comic, particularly at that time, that was an absolutely solid rule. Marvel was something. I mean, today it's something else, but it was something then. It was one thing then. And Jim had his finger on that. And I think he did a pretty good job. And the people that he worked with were great. And Jim, of course, was a writer. So he had some idea what he was getting into. But if we're going to be just a superhero medium, which we had been for a long time, then that's fine. But if we're not, we got to get rid of that rule as an absolute rule. It'll work for your traditional Marvel story and many traditional superhero stories, and it'll always work if you know how to do it right.
I want to, first of all, Mike, it's 6.4 pounds, in case you didn't see.
I'm sorry?
The Chew Omnibus edition is 6.4 pounds.
Oh, thank you.
The other thing is, in the chat, in the comments section when you're watching this, there's a link to the project on Kickstarter. Go back it. We want those numbers to increase. We want this to be funded. As soon as the quicker it's funded, the quicker we can talk about stretch goals. I want to share a little bit about the what's on what's in the campaign. Tell us what we're getting, Paul, if you can, in terms of this book. So there's some add-ons, but what is the book itself?
Sure. Okay. So it's the comic itself, and we've talked about it a little bit already. It's a young man finds this talisman that allows him to channel the powers of the gods. That's what we've seen a lot of in the preview. That's some of the preview pages that are up there already. And this is a young man from a small town. He's not led a particularly exciting life. He's happy with his life. He's got a great family. He runs the family pizza shop. Has the same friends he's had since they were in school, because that's how life tends to be in small towns. And this is a level of excitement and danger that he never even considered how he would deal with when he was faced with it. So we ended up with 3 phenomenal covers for fans of variant covers. Of course, the main cover is the one that Dee drew, colors by our series colorist, Ibrahim Aydin. And it is just absolutely phenomenal. There's so much storytelling in that cover. And that's one of the things I absolutely love about that. And by the way, Dee, you mentioned this when you were chatting about some of the family pages. That was one of the reasons I sort of gravitated towards you for this project in the first place, was because I knew this was a project that's going to need a lot of expression from the characters. And that's something that Dee is just absolutely phenomenal at. And so that just adds so much to this entire story. And there I am holding my sleeping child.
You're pink. You're all pink.
We're all pink.
Hey, look at that.
Whoa.
Look at that guy.
Yeah, it's a crossover with Esquire magazine.
No, I appreciate that. I'm really excited about it. There's tons of options. You know, there's a bunch of different digital and physical options you can get with the book. I want to come back one more time to something that. So, I knew. First of all, I trusted you in terms of, you know, working with Dee, that was going to be the right person, because I trust your judgment on that. There was, and you know, reading the script and kind of, we talked about a bunch of different things and some things that we wanted to move around, or I had some notes on things. There's a page, I think it's page 3, and when I saw the actual page that Dee drew, I knew that I would never have to worry about anything else in this book. And it is the there's a page where there's a text messaging going on, and it is the role of a brilliant artist to transform what you had put in script into what that page became, and it was beautiful. And I applaud you on that, Dee.
Thank you.
When you were working through this, how did you manage what you wanted this to look like in terms of style versus what your other styles are? You know, you can do a bunch of different things, but where did you? How easy was it for you to land on this is what the look of this book is?
Paul and I went back and forth with a bunch of different like character designs, which kind of cued into what the like the character model styles would be. Visually, knew that I was going to be evoking like I do a web comic, and that's very almost 6 panels by the numbers. They're square. It's all about the character acting. That's because I'm trying to make sure that it's readable on your phone, stuff like that.
Right.
I actually hate the layout of my webcomic, but I design it so that people can scroll through one panel at a time, and it's super easy, and then I can just put it back together as a page for print. I'd much prefer doing wilder layouts. Still clear, still clean. You know, I'm storytelling above all. Like there is a little bit of influence. Go back to some of the early 90s John Romita Jr. when he came back to Spider-Man. I really liked his layouts on that. The use of inset panels is stuff that I kind of got from, again, early 90s Joe Quesada, who could do these amazingly elaborately designed pages that actually were still readable. They weren't just a cacophony. And unlike most of the artists that got big in that period, some of those are 15-panel pages, like with all these tiny little insets. And I'm a big lover of the inset for when you need to draw the eye to something without it taking up an entire part of the scene. And that was how I decided to do, like with the cell phone scene. I'm like, okay, this is the kind of thing that the one thing I didn't want to do was that 4 panels in a row where the panel doesn't change. I wanted to make sure that you always cut back, you show some expressions and body language. I think one of the first things I told Paul, if memory serves, and I tell this to any writer who wants to work with me, is that I will read the script and I will come back with you with suggestions for more panels, a lot. I am never the artist I'm never gonna say this could be a splash page. The first splash page in the script is now a 3-panel page because I'm like, this needs some beats to build the tension. I want to have beats, you know, if a character says something and that reaction needs a beat, and that a lot of that comes from of all things Schultz's Peanuts, the infamous third silent panel in So Many Peanuts where a character's just reacting before the punchline. Jeff Smith in Bone does that brilliantly in terms of pacing, and those silent beats sometimes, the character acting needs those beats, needs those extra panels in there. And I'm rambling at this point now, but it's how my brain operates.
No, I want to jump in because you're absolutely right. That was one of the first things you said, and I told you absolutely not. I never do anything. Like, please, if you think you can draw something better than what I put up there. Oh, hi, Diane. Thank you. If you think you can draw something better than the way I have it written, that's why I love working with Dee and with other artists. They're the experts at this. They're the experts at the visual part of the story. Like, I can sort of see something in my head, but until it's out on the paper, I don't know if it's going to work the way I think it's going to work. And she does, right? Like, she can look at that like, oh, no. We're going to do it this way. And I don't know if I've taken any of the things that you've suggested throughout this issue. And the artwork's done. So this is, we're just waiting on the last batch of pages to get colored. So this is the whole thing. Maybe one thing I was like, no, maybe we do, but I don't even know if I said that to one thing. Most of the time I was like,
there was one thing, and I do not remember what it was, where I made a recommendation. You're like, nah, I like, I'm like, okay.
Right. But for the most part, it's, we go with it, and you're almost always right that it's going to look better the way you're telling me it's going to look better. And so
that's why
you're making it work that much better.
The magic of comics is that it is a sequentially collaborative medium. And nothing else is really quite like that. So if you let the writer do his or her job and you let the artist do their job, you'll get maximum input. Doesn't mean it'll be the best thing for the story, and sometimes discussions ensue. But if you don't let the other one intimidate you, and you have a good editor, he says.
We do.
Yeah. You mentioned, Dee, about inset panels.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting because a couple months ago, I got into a long discussion about that at some godforsaken convention about Simon and Kirby. And if you look at their work, evolution, how the work evolved from the early 40s until, I don't know, Fighting American and The Shield and The Fly in the late 50s, you'll see the evolution of the inset panel and the evolution of the communication between what's going on in the inset panels and the overall story. Now, of course, those stories were incredibly action-filled, so it was all oriented towards that. But to watch it evolve over the years, these guys really figured it out just by doing it and doing it and doing it. They figured it out. And the beautiful thing is, those of us who have followed in their wake, and there are other artists like that, Dick Sprang comes to mind, Joe Kubert, arguably the best of them, it makes this medium progressive. I don't mean that in the political sense, oddly. It allows us to grow. We've grown up on their efforts, and others will grow up on your efforts. And that's great. That's the way it's supposed to be. Because, it's a small, sorry, Bob, it's a donut shop.
Yeah.
We all sit around the table at the donut shop and we share everything. People who hate each other Share everything. It's amazing.
So Diane brings up a point. I want to take a minute, just kind of go back to Paul. This is your second story, second Kickstarter issue, 2 issue 1s now. How I want to share also a moment. I think it was October or September of last year, and I was talking to your wife, and she was gushing about how you had surprised her into turning into a comic book writer. And but you've done it now, and you have other endeavors and stuff, but like, this is now part of your life. You've made a comic book, you're making more comic books. Is it what you thought it was going to be? Where are the differences in what you thought it was be, and where are the similarities?
So I guess what I thought it would be, because I'm not out there like actively pursuing work for hire, I thought it would be whatever, however it is that I want to be. Now, the part that's a little bit out of my control is obviously the getting it made, the funding part. And that is always a little bit stressful. So, hey, everybody, if you haven't backed the Olympian yet, go on over to comic.com.
Right down there. It's right down.
And check it out. There's options as low as $5 for a digital copy. And also some very cool stuff you can add on to it. But no, like I said, this is something that I'm doing because it's something I love doing. I started writing because I hadn't done it in a while, and comics were sort of the things that I was surrounded by and that I enjoyed reading myself. So I wanted to give that a shot. And once I started and got through a lot of heroes and zeros and realized that, hey, I'm going to finish this story, and hey, I really like this story. And there were already like 4 other stories banging around in my head that I was like, okay, I'm going to get to that one. I'm going to write down some notes and I'm going to get to it later. And then once I was at a point with heroes and zeros where it was kind of on cruise control, at least from, for my part of it, was when I was able to start working on the Olympian. And so that's really it. It is pretty much what I've expected, because I'm doing the things that I want to do with it.
Awesome.
I'm not really relying on, I'm not putting my expectations of, oh, well, I have to get hired by Marvel, or I have to get hired by DC, or anything like that. And like I say, I know plenty of folks who do that for a living, and that is their life, and that is what they do. I love them. I'm not sure I want to do that all the time. Like,
Right.
I kind of like doing it this way.
You want to do a Batman story, you're going to do it their way. I mean, you're going to have a lot of input, but they're going to protect their character, Spider-Man, whatever. If you own it sort of pulls back the editor's purview, but not a lot, because the editor previously was representing the company in terms of policy and in terms of character development, whereas the editor on a creator-owned project is representing the creators.
Yep.
So you can't say, well, no, he'd never do that. Well, yes, he would. The creator said so. Who are you?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and that's, like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there's not a world in which I wouldn't like to try my hand at something like that.
Absolutely.
But right now, this is what I enjoy doing. I have these characters, I have these stories, and I like telling them the way I like telling them. And I feel like, not to, put myself up on a pedestal, but I feel like I write differently than a lot of writers that are out there. And that's a good thing.
Yes.
But it might not be what an editor from a big company would be looking for either. So luckily we have Bob here as an editor who, like you say, his interest is in making this story that we're telling the best it can be. And by the way, I haven't said this. I've said a lot of wonderful things about Dee. I've not had a chance to say wonderful things about Bob yet, because he has been a great collaborator on this, and some of the notes he sent back with the script were absolutely invaluable, because sometimes you just start writing and you kind of get ahead of yourself, and some of the things he points out that were maybe not in the full spirit of the rest of the book were fantastic. And between the two of them that I've been working with on this for a while, they have made this so much better than the words I originally put on paper.
Thanks.
Let me tell you something about Bob. I started writing, in terms of being paid for it, when I was when I was 15. I started editing when I was 17, which immediately spoiled me. And mostly I have worked as an editor in comics, not so much in other media. And then I've sort of semi-retired, and now I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing now. And Bob is my editor. Now, I try not to throw my weight around, and I can't with Bob, and I wouldn't. But if I'm going to work for an editor, it's going to be a damn good editor, because I know better. That's what I got to tell you about Bob.
I appreciate that. I want to change the topic very quickly. So, Dee, when Paul, Paul and I talked about you guys being on the show, and I'm like, let's do it opening night. We want to do that again. And he's like, I can get Dee on. I'm like, yes, please, let's do that, because I want to talk to you. I want everyone to know that there are physical copies of your web story, which is Finding Dee, and that are collected. You can get them on Laguna Studios website. The physical books there. They're also available on Amazon if you choose to do that. I'm a big fan of Lori at Laguna Studios. I had her on a podcast years ago. Can you talk a little bit about Finding Dee?
Sure. So I'm transgender. I came out in 2016, and I was at the time doing a webcomic called Dandy and Company. Very Looney Tunes meets Snoopy, slapstick, DuckTales adventures. Very, very fun. I've been working on it in one form or another for actually since I was 8, but like officially since 93. Like that's when I was like starting to publish like zines and stuff.
That's when you were 9 in 93?
No. That I was just out of high school. I went to the Kubert School for a year, and I took my childhood characters and just rebooted them. But I published those as zines, and that is the exact same continuity that I picked up in 2001 when I went to the internet. So that is official continuity. I was doing that for years and years and years, and I always appeared as a supporting character in the strip. I was the cartoonist. So anytime the characters didn't like the way a story was going, they'd come and yell at me. It was a running gag. So when I came out in the strip with my character like complaining, "Hey, why am I not in these scripts?" The hell? And just looking at me, and I have to explain what being transgender is, and then the character Dandy is just like, "Okay, fine, Dee, why am I not in the scripts?" And we just move on from there. And that's kind of like the proto. So I had all my friends were going, "You should make a comic about this. You should make a comic about this. You should make a comic about this." And I'd been writing a blog, and it was very negative. It was making me feel, I was like, I'd talk about what bad problems I'd have today, or someone to give me a hard time or whatever. And after about a year, I thought, okay, well, maybe I should make a comic about this, but I'll make it as a comic strip. It's my preferred format. I love doing comic strips. And I can then give myself punchlines at the end of no matter what's happening, try to find a punchline so that cartoon me can figure out how to deal with stressful situations. And if cartoon me can figure it out, then real me can figure it out. And I mean, since it's launched in 2017, I'd say it crosses back over into that territory maybe once every 2 or 3 months. Like 90% of the time, it's about me, my partner Heidi, our dog, our cats, just whatever random nonsense is happening in our lives. Our dog is kind of starting to go blind. That's this week's strip. Tomorrow is going to be about, we have little steps, but he can't see to get down them at night anymore. So we have to pick him up and put him on the ground. But then he'll be like, actually, I just want back up. It's like, oh, come on. That's what it's about. More often than not, it's so weird that it's considered vaguely controversial because of the nature of me and my relationship with Heidi. But it is like, I like to call it, it's our interestingly boring lives. We go to karaoke, we watch goofy movies. I'm a massive Star Trek fan, so I'll put a bunch of Star Trek jokes in there. And it's just this weird little look into whatever's going on in our lives. I'll use it to do like little style parody the other day, because about a month ago, really, really sick, and I was just chugging Dayquil to try to keep myself functioning. And I was having the trippiest, weirdest dreams. And I'm like, ooh, finally, an opportunity to do some cosmic Kirby thing. That'll be my weird dream. And like, I love doing little style parodies. Like, it's kind of it's a little bit of everything that I want it to be at any given moment now.
That's awesome.
How has been the reception to your book? I mean, obviously, at a certain point, if the reader is not going to enjoy the subject matter, you're probably not going to read it. But those that do, what sort of feedback do you get?
I get a lot of really wonderful feedback. It's terrible feedback for somebody who has a self-destructive streak, who constantly wants to think no one cares about anything you do, blah, blah, blah. But I can't pretend that with some of the feedback I've gotten. A lot of it is the relatability of it. I've had a lot of people who have had very negative perspectives on the transgender experience who have messaged me, and they have changed the way they think about it because of how I presented the information. Because I showed it's just about our normal lives. We're normal people. We do normal things. This is one aspect of what I am, no different. And it's like, I am a transgender woman in the same way I am a tall woman, an overweight woman, occasionally blonde but graying woman, a woman who wears glasses and likes the Phantom.
There you go.
They're descriptors. They're just a part of what it is. And I've had other people who have literally come out because they read my strip and it was a relatable story that helped them put into words what they were feeling and gave them that courage to do that. And I'm like, I am so incredibly humbled by that, to the degree that I try not to think, because it fucks with my head. Oh, can I say that?
Yeah, it's fine.
Sorry, I forgot to check.
No, we're good.
Okay.
My mouth, I slip all the time.
Yeah, the first strip I did, because when I was doing Dandy and Company for like years, it was an all ages comic. The first Finding D strip is me being told over and over again I should make this, and I should tell my story as a comic. I'm like, fine, I'll tell it as a fucking comic. Ooh, I can curse in this one. Fuckity fuck. Like, that was the first strip, is me being excited that I can curse. Funny thing is, I don't do it anymore. And the color versions, the Laguna Studios versions, are the original unedited, lots of cursing, because I curse. I fucking curse. But the black and white prints, which I self-published through Amazon, which necessary evil for folks like me. But those are actually, I also edited them. After years of consideration, I took the cursing out of those versions because I go to a book signing or a convention, and I have lost track of how many parents have come up to me saying that their kid has talked to them. Their kid is coming out. Is this appropriate for a child to read? And I always have to be like, I mean, there's nothing that's in there that if your kid has watched The Simpsons, they're not going to be shocked by the content. There's no graphic violence. There's no, I don't draw our sex life or anything like that. It's very much a life standard strip, but there's a lot of cursing. And sometimes I'd have to say, I hate to say this, but if you have a young child who's, contemplating coming out as transgender in our current climate, they really do need to learn how to navigate the word fuck, because it's going to be weaponized against a lot.
That's true. That's a very good observation. I think that's absolutely true.
But on the same token,
people who hate the language are just keeping it going. It's their hatred that keeps it going. It's all that language has been commonplace in the last 40, 50 years. Mm-hmm. So if it offends you, fine, you're going to be offended. If it offends you a lot, fuck you.
I don't want to try. I'm not going to be responsible for what offends somebody verbiage wise. I mean, I'm not going to. If the word moist freaks you out, that's your thing. But it's a word, and I need to use it when I'm describing my preferred form of brownie. And there's a lot of circumstances in life, especially when you're coming out in a world that is very hostile towards what you're doing, where fuck is a quiver in the arrow that you have to get through the day. I mean, they did a Mythbusters episode, proved it literally reduces increases your pain threshold.
Yes.
To curse. Yes. But I did want to make separate versions. I've got the black and white versions, these are actually the print proofs, but they all are the cleaned up versions. So these are the more they're cheaper, they're more entry level. And plus the strips were originally in black and white with a handful of exceptions. Like I love doing a spot color. We have like there's a strip our power goes out all the time here. We don't have flashlights. So I did a strip about that, and it's a black and white comic, but the colored blades popped right up and they give them the nice glow and all that jazz. I like doing the little spot color every now and again for fun. The Kirby strip was color because I tried to do my best to replicate like 60s and 70s Ben-Day dot printing and bleeded where you can see the magenta bleeding through the black because the opacity's not quite right and all that. Like if it calls for it, I'll do color. And then with Lori in Laguna, she came to me with those books are in full color. We have a wonderful colorist, Katie Rooston, who does all that, and she's currently working on strips for the third.
Yeah. So Lori Foster is she's brilliant, and she is good for comics. Absolutely.
Yes.
If I can just, I'm sorry, I saw a comment pop up here, and I just need to respond to this one as a father. Vasilis, just remember, you can say fuck at home, but please do not say it at school. Your teachers will get angry.
Yeah.
This is my 5-year-old son.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's ridiculous.
Words and there's at school words. And some of the words are only at home words, and that's okay.
Wield it like the power of the gods.
Let me tell you
I'm a bad influence.
This was one of the most inspirational stories I'd been a part of in decades and decades, and I guess I have Donald Trump to thank for it. This happened 4 days after he was elected president the first time. And my daughter gives me a call and says, "Hey, there's a rally at Yale University in New Haven Friday." And I'm thinking, oh, that's kind of funny. I mean, I was involved in, and still am, many a protest over the years. And I thought, oh, so now you're using your smartphones to organize real fast. Oh, that's wonderful. So I went there with her. And we had a good turnout. There's a couple thousand people on the green there in New Haven. I scoffed at it being a Yale event. It was not. It was an event organized by 14 to 21-year-olds entirely. And the last speaker, we had about 2-3 hours of speakers, and they were great. The last speaker was 14 years old. And he's talking very enthusiastically, and he's organizing and saying, you have to stand up for yourself, which is my first law. You have to stand up for yourself. And he came out right there in front of all these people, which, mind you, is like, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. So it was a little scarier than it is today, or at least it was up until about a year ago. Now I guess it's scary again. But his last words were, "Now I got to go home and tell my parents." This 14-year-old. And we can all feel that. We all know what that's like, one way or another. But boy, my respect and my courage, I was inspired by his courage. Don't know what happened to the guy. He's now in his 20s. But boy, was that a great event. And I was in the first gay rights demonstration back in 1969, back in New York at the Stonewall.
Oh,
so
wow.
I've been watching this for a long time. Yeah, I'm an old fart. But I've been watching this for a long time and been part of it and been an organizer. But that 14-year-old, I'd throw his bail tomorrow if I had to.
Yeah, team. If there's this event that happened in the last, 60 years, Mike was there. So, I want to come back to the book. I want to come back to the Olympian. What was the most? Each of you, I want you to answer this. What was the most fun thing about this project? Because I will tell the people who are listening and the people who are gonna back this book, it is fun. What was the fun thing for you guys?
D, you go first.
No, you go first. I'm putting you on the spot.
So I've got sort of two answers. One of them's a little bit corny, but it's true. And part of the fun to me was being able to write a story with a superhero named after my son. And
I'm going to stop you because one of the it's on page 1, and I'm like, oh, he named it after his son.
And that's part of how the story grew into what it is in the first place. You will see, and it's not meant to be it's certainly not as biographical as Finding D would be, but there's some parallels to our own family, and the father who's not Greek, but if you're in a half Greek family, you're in a Greek family,
Right?
And then at the town that it's set in is modeled after the town I graduated from high school in, a little place called Keene, New Hampshire. And there was for a small town, there was a large Greek contingent there. And so when I started thinking about where to set it, that kind of all came together. But the reason I wanted to do that, and the reason it makes me so happy to think about it, is one of the things that I remember Constance saying to me years and years ago. I think even before we got married, was talking about, and the name Constance, not particularly common, not that uncommon. I think most of us have at least heard it in some context. But she said, "Oh yeah, whenever we go out to touristy places or Disney or anything like that, or they've got the wall of magnets with people's names on them. I never see my name. I never see Constance. I never see it in popular culture, very rarely. And I knew giving him this name, he was kind of going to be in that same circumstance. So the fact that I had this power in my hands to say, well, I don't know how well known it's going to be, but I can at least change that. They can pull a comic book off the shelf and see his own name in it. That was really fun for me.
That's awesome.
The other fun part was when I realized that we were dealing with mythology and gods, and I could include mythological creatures. And thus the Minotaur that we've seen, who shall remain a bit mysterious for now. But will play a large role not only in this first issue, but in the entire series going forward.
It's funny. I want to put a pin on that because I just want to talk about what Paul said. So, at least the other two of the three of you know my wife Sherry, and there are not very many things for Sherry in places just like Constance. So she does not find her name, and it's consternation to her constantly. But she is also in a comic book. If you haven't backed Shelley Bond's book about her summer camp diaries, there's a character in that book that is named after Sherry. So she's in the book there. So her and Vasilis have similar experiences.
That's awesome. I haven't. I'm gonna have to go check that one out though.
All right. So D, what's the funnest part about this book?
Hold on one second.
Apologize for my lack of.
I had to
grammar.
put her name into one of my Google browsers so I could look it up when we're done, and then I'm like, crap, where's the window for our stream? There's a lot of fun bits like peppered throughout. Like I said earlier, the living room scene with Vasilis and his parents was a lot of fun to do. I think that's one of the first times I recommended a direct change where I actually said, shouldn't this be the mom's dialogue, not the dad's? It sounds more like a thing, and out pretty well because I love doing the facial acting where the parents are being. There's a little bit of tension there, but there's also playfulness, like kind of ribbing a little bit, giving them a little bit of crap, and I like playing that in the faces. But the most are the pages we can't reveal because it's all spoilers at the end of the book.
Yeah. I mean, those are great pages.
One of the most fun that I had, and then this was something that Dee added in entirely on her own. And I don't think this is particularly spoilery, but there's a scene and this is not something we've shown publicly, but there's a scene where, Vasilis gets back to his apartment. It's very shortly after the lightning scene. And he just kind of bursts through the door, and he has a pet ferret. And this is the ferret's debut. And the way Dee just drew this little ferret in the background, just kind of sitting on a little ferret tree by the door. And then as the door bursts open, jumping in the air, and then landing behind the couch, and you don't see, and there's that little beat, and then just this little head popping up behind the couch to see what's going on. And I was like, this little bit of brilliance in the background just added so much levity to an otherwise tense and serious scene, and it was phenomenal.
That's a huge part of what a lot of people miss in this medium, in that there's a main story and a main act of what's going on, but especially today where backgrounds and are disappearing, the B story that you have that is distracting and additive at the same time in backgrounds is so much of what makes this medium so captivating. I appreciate that.
Eyeball kick.
Eyeball hit?
eyeball kicks.
Eyeball.
If we had the attitude today with all of our magic color printing, that if we had that back in the 50s, Mad Magazine would never have happened. We wouldn't have had Willie Elder and Wally Wood and Jack Davis doing and others doing all of this fabulous, mind-blowing, weird shit in the background. It would enhance the story and make it funnier because Mad was a comedy publication. And I'm referring to the comic books, not so much the magazine. And we saw that in others. I mean, everybody did their imitations of Mad comics. Joe Manili did great work over at Marvel and just everywhere except DC because they don't have a sense of humor. And it made this medium truly magical, and I miss backgrounds for that reason alone. That reason more than others. I miss backgrounds.
Yeah, I love figuring out, is there something you can be putting that is complementary to what's happening in some fashion that helps with the storytelling, helps with the characterization, helps with world building that happens in the background. I am that kind of stuff. Mad Magazine, from book one of my favorites ever, Kyle Baker did a book years ago called How to Draw Stupid. And there's a chapter that's all about something is always better than nothing. Like if you have two people talking, having them do literally anything is better than just the talking head. So even if it's having a cup of coffee, taking out the garbage, something. So I mean, I incorporated some of that stuff in the kitchen with Yaya, where everyone doing something in that scene. No, they're taking stuff off the shelves and packing. Little bits of activity that are happening. When they're in the bar seat, someone will fiddle with their glass. I do that. Probably seen my arms going like this because I've got all kinds of little toys and tchotchkes on my desk, and I'm fiddling with them the entire time. And yeah, little bits like that with the ferret, where I'm like, well, why don't I put the cage in a little ferret door, so when the door slams open, the ferret's just like, the hell? And just burst and have a little comedy bit. It's not necessarily but he's supposed to come up on the shoulder at the end, so get him to the shoulder. And yeah, a lot of that was very heavily influenced by Mad Magazine. A lot of Sergio Aragonés stuff in Magazine, and Gru as well, like his Gru work, where there's always something happening in the background of a panel. There's like 5 or 6 jokes happening in the background of a panel.
Yep.
And I adore that.
You mentioned 2 people I love, Kyle Baker, and I was in Why I Hate Saturn. I was a character in that. And yeah, I know.
Okay, you do not understand. That is like if Tipo's like, what is your top 5 all-time favorite books? Why I Hate Saturn is always at the top of that. It is one of my biggest. I adore it with all my heart. So I'm going to go reread it when this is over and look for you.
I'm in it, and you'll find me. And Sergio. And because I'm here as a storyteller, I'll tell a quick Sergio story. The best time I ever had at 2 a.m. on a New York subway train that had no power and was grounded in the tunnel was standing next to Sergio. Because it took about 20 minutes for them to get the power back on. And Sergio, we couldn't see anybody. Sergio kept the whole train car in stitches the whole time. I would have paid money. I would have paid good money. I would have robbed other people and used their money to enjoy that. And I got it for free. I
have no doubt of that. I'm a member of the NCS, National Communist Society, and that we do a monthly online get-together just like this. And he always is holding court. He will always tell stories, and everyone is just like, because they're great. They are.
I once was editing a book, and I was running very, very late. And I sarcastically said, the only way we're going to catch this book up is if we get Sergio to draw it. He did a fill-in issue written around Sergio that he drew. So,
Oh, that's brilliant.
and he did it for
What
that
was
reason. You know,
What book was that?
it was a little book we called John Sable Freelance,
Nice.
which might be the last place you'd expect Sergio.
That
to
is definitely
pop up.
that might be.
So seeking that out.
It was fun. It was great fun.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant.
Again, I cannot thank you guys enough for being on tonight. And you know, we're so excited about this book, and we want everybody to go. Please go into the comments. You can see, you know, you can get to this Kickstarter project and back it and get it to the stretch goals, because I've seen some of them and you're gonna want them. We are.
How long does the campaign run?
It is. There's 27 days to go. We've gotten, I think, 3 backers during the show.
All right.
And if I can, specifically, I know Brian and Diane, thank you so much. Your support means so much to us. And I really appreciate it. And I hope you will love it as much as we love making it.
All right. Well, we can't wait to have you guys back for when issue 2 comes out, for sure. And again, thank you guys so much for being here. Is there anything else you guys want to plug before we go? You mentioned your appearance, Paul. You're going to be where?
I'm actually, hey, I'm doing 2 conventions this year, not just walking through the doors and attending. Look for this banner. I'm going to be at PalmCon South in Delray Beach, Florida on April 5th, and First Coast Comic Con in Jacksonville at the University of North Florida on, I believe, July 12th. Both one-day cons, because I am not that social, and it terrifies me to think about sitting at a 3 or 4 day con with 1 or, in July, 2 comic books to sell. So one-day cons are where it's at.
Do you have any shows coming up?
Nothing confirmed yet. I'm waiting on. They're both juried shows, so I'll find out if I'm going to get in. So fingers are crossed.
We're here too.
Roughly, where are you located, G?
I'm in Western Pennsylvania, so like dab between 3 and Pittsburgh.
Oh. Well, that's a little far from Ithaca, but we'll be in Ithaca in 3 weeks, Bob. Is it 3 weeks?
Very
forward?
soon.
Come on up to Ithaca. I want to meet you.
If I can make it.
I wish
All
you
right.
would.
I'm very busy.
Thanks so much for you guys being here. Everybody,
you,
please
guys.
go back to the Olympian, and thanks again.
We
Thank
really,
you for having
really
us.
appreciate it.
Great talking to you. And
We'll
thanks,
be here for you for the next issue.
All right, same day next year?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks. You're right.
We have a lot of shows coming at you, folks. I want to give you an idea about what's coming. So first of all, this is not even accurate anymore because we had Paul and Dion just now. But we have a show on Thursday. We have a show on Tuesday. We have a show the following Thursday. We have a show the following Tuesday. I've already booked the following Tuesday, which is not even on here yet. Which for you is going to be Tyler Chintana is going to be on the show. We're going to talk to him. David Peterson is going to be on the show in April. We haven't gotten the date yet, but he's going to be there. There are some other names that are going to be mind-blowing to me that are going to be on the show. So please make sure you follow us. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're watching this, and keep track of when we go live. It'll be Tuesdays. We'll be here on Tuesday nights at 8:00 Eastern, and wherever that is, wherever you are. We may be here Thursdays. So stay tuned.
Eastern Daylight Time.
Right now it's daylight.
Please, let's just let's not go there.
All right. I don't want to go any further. So
I live for this 7 months.
it is. I mean, the weather was really nice today. We didn't
Oh,
talk about the
yeah.
weather tonight, but it was nice today. I hope it stays that way. We will be next week on so we'll be back on Thursday. But Tuesday is I'm gonna be remote, so we're gonna pull that little rabbit out of the hat again because I will be I need to travel, so I'm gonna be away on Tuesday, but we will still have the show. Mike Oming is gonna be on the show on Tuesday, which I'm really looking forward to. What else you got, Mike?
What else do I have?
Yep.
I have some sort of dinner awaiting me.
Okay.
I have the 2024 Flash Gordon strips to finish reading. I have 1 month to go, and then January and February. But I'm loving it. So I'll probably be babbling about newspaper strips again next week.
Sounds good.
Or Thursday or whatever. But otherwise, it's a slow, cold, lonely existence.
Well, we're here to make it fun, and we're gonna keep doing it. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. We will be back at you in 2 days on Thursday night. Ed Cato is gonna be on the show. We're gonna talk about a lot more about Ithacon. We're also going to have Alison Sampson on from England, and we're gonna talk about her work. We're gonna talk about her. She just recently had her first writing work published, which we're excited about as well. So, everybody, thanks again for being here. Thanks for being
so
part of the
much
squad.
for being here. We look forward to seeing you, and I hope you look forward to seeing us on Thursday.
All right. We'll see you later.
Take it easy.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?